Welcome to Double Helix. We are Jonah Kim and Janice McCoy discussing how to judge a book.
So have you found yourself in this common situation where somebody comes up to you and says, that book is objectively terrible, and you actually thought it was rather good? So you either say, well, I thought that book was rather good, or you don't say anything at all.
And I tend often not to say anything, especially if I don't know the person well. It's very awkward.
Right.
Put yourself out there.
Exactly. But we think you can change the conversation with one question, which is,
why didn't it work for you? Which changes the conversation because it puts it on a more honest footing, which is that this is a conversation about subjective tastes and not about facts. So.
However, if you've asked that question and the answer comes back, well, it didn't work for me because I thought the book was terrible, then we think you should just say, I need another drink, and bail. Otherwise, if the person actually listens to what you asked, which is, why didn't it work for you, meaning what were the qualities that you found so terrible, then you could actually enjoy a discussion of opposing views. And
it may turn out that the reason the person didn't like a book that you loved is because the criteria that they use for judging a book is different than your criteria. And that can be a fascinating conversation to have. And it's not about the book being bad or the book being good. It's about what you look for in a book versus what they look for in a book, which is, I think, a fantastic conversation.
Right. And we have some criteria that we use here at Double Helix Review.
Because we ask ourselves that same question every time we sit down to review a book.
Right. Why did it work? Or why didn't it work for us? So we have a couple of things here we'd like to introduce to you.
Okay, so first and foremost is plot. So what is the structure of the plot? What is the pacing of the plot? Are there any plot twists, and do they work?
Right, and some books may have, the whole focus of it purely driven on the plot. You need to get to the end to find out how it works. And some of them actually don't necessarily have to be plot-driven, but can still be very good books because of the writing or the characters. Some of the other things we can talk about now.
Right, so the next thing that we would think about would be character. And some books have both amazing plot and good characters, but often you get one or the other, it seems.
Yes, it's very hard to do all of it.
Well-structured plot, or you get a really character-driven story. So when you're thinking about characters, you might think about what point of view is it written in? Are the characters believable? Are they relatable?
Do you find yourself sympathizing with the character? And we here definitely think that, for us, we need to really have a sympathetic character.
I know I have friends who don't need a sympathetic character. So this is one of those places where a book wouldn't work for me, where it would work for one of these friends of mine who don't need the sympathetic character.
Right.
And that's fine.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. And one of the aspects of science fiction is to create a world that is believable, relatable, in some way unique.
Right. Often relying on, because it's science fiction, something in science.
Right.
Which hopefully is something new and exciting and compelling to think about.
Right. And that's actually one of the things that we also are interested in, because science fiction by itself, you need to have that element of forward-looking, an aspect of looking at the future. And we look at that and see whether it's something that is believable. And believability is also rooted in whether or not the science in the book works.
And we are not scientists, so we're not really qualified to judge too much.
No.
But there are some that we know enough that there's some science fiction that doesn't work for us because the science clearly doesn't work.
Right.
Your level of science backgrounds might affect the believability of the science.
Right.
For you. So don't look to us to be really judging, at least not to me. Maybe, Jonah, you have more science than I do? No?
Yeah.
Okay. And then something that we care about that not everyone cares about at all is prose. Is it well written? Are the words put together in a functional and maybe even beautiful way?
Yeah, and personally, I enjoy reading because I enjoy good prose, and so for me, that would be something that I would consider. If it's badly written, it will distract me from immersing
Yes.
myself into that experience.
Yes, definitely. And then, so all of this put together, does it create something unique? Is it a story that we feel like we read over and over again? Is it taking the same old science tropes and just doing what everyone else is doing it with them? Or is it doing something a little bit different?
Right.
And obviously, you can tell from the way I'm talking, I like something that does something a little bit different, something unique.
Yes, I agree with that too.
Okay.
And then we have other criteria here at Double Helix Review that not everyone else may value, but we certainly think is important.
Yes.
So there are maybe 3 or 4 we would like to introduce to you. That is something that we would usually factor into our reviews.
The first, not necessarily in priority, but just the first we'll talk about is gender. Because science fiction does often interesting things with gender, but it can also fall into the stereotypes. You can get your women being rescued. You can get your women dying to motivate the male character. You can get your sidekicks.
You can get your manic pixie dream girl.
Yes, all of
We
the
don't
things,
want that.
all of the things that we don't like in other kinds of fiction can turn up in sci-fi. So we look at the way gender is treated in a book with a critical eye. So
Yes.
that's one area we care about, particularly as women. So
And one other factor that raises similar issues to gender would be race.
Yes.
We definitely look to the treatment of race. Being sci-fi, it may not necessarily be very obvious that it's race. They can be presented as aliens.
right,
But good sci-fi, we think, does stimulate a discussion on race.
right, and can do interesting things with it and not just fall into these same old bad stereotypes that have been around forever.
Right.
So
And in a similar vein, cultural sensitivity would be something that we definitely look at.
So does the book appropriate someone else's culture in order to make their book more exotic?
Right. And we've definitely seen lots of cases of that.
Yeah.
Religion would be another one.
And religion.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily pop up a lot in sci-fi.
No, not necessarily, but it can come
It can.
in a disguise.
Yes,
a
that's true.
disguised form.
That is true.
Right.
That is true.
So there you have it. The single question to ask yourself to move beyond the most basic reaction of like and dislike, or worse, factual statements about a book's quality.
It's a terrible book. It's a bad book. So don't ask yourself, is it a good book? Don't even ask yourself, did I like the book? Ask yourself, did the book work for me? And your friends, ask that of them as well when they're talking about books.
And thank you for tuning into Double Helix today.